Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mintegral's App Chat, our content series where we will talk to app marketers happy to share stories about marketing and how they work with Mintegral too. Today, we have a great guest. We're talking to Gonzalo Martins, VP of Marketing at Boombit, who's here today to talk about his app marketing experiences, key trends for 2024, and a little bit about Mintegral as well. Hello, Gonzalo. Nice to have you with us.
Hello, nice to have you as well.
Thanks. So rather than letting me do all the talking, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Gonzalo Martins. I'm VP of Marketing at Boombit. So basically, I'm overseeing all user acquisition and monetization departments within the old Boombit portfolio. And yeah, been at Boombit for over 3 years, been in the industry for around 6 years already. And it's been a pretty interesting ride for sure.
Brilliant. So how would you kind of describe what Boombit does and more about your
Yeah.
app portfolio as well?
Yeah, exactly. So Boombit is a mobile game publisher, right? So we focus mainly on game publishing and production, of course. We have a pretty different type of apps that we are advertising at the moment. So we focus a lot on hyper casual, we focus a lot on mid-core, on casual as well. We have a few games with merge, match three, simulation. So I think the fact that we are a pretty experienced company has allowed us to expand a little bit our portfolio and the types of games that we are producing slash publishing. And yeah, it's been a pretty interesting ride. Of course, 3 years ago, we were very hyper casual focus. And for the past 2, 3 years, we changed the focus a bit more to IP driven games, while in reality, we always had these legacy games that are more simulation driven. So pretty interesting, pretty intense,
Yes,
but
pretty
definitely
intense.
good.
Yeah,
Yes.
across a number of different app categories, it can this would be extremely competitive. So
Yes. Yes.
how do you keep up with the evolution across, I guess, so rather than just focusing on Sims, how do you keep up with I guess all of these genres and what do you do to keep on top?
Yeah, I think a big move on our side was also to add the publishing side, of course. So we were mainly building games in-house, but opening up the publishing branch allowed us to reach new game genres and new studios and new teams that were doing things slightly different than what we were doing in-house. Then, by getting that experience of publishing different games, working with different teams, we have kind of a privileged position to understand what type of genres are working better, what type of game mechanics are more interesting to the users, and then that allow us as well to internally perfect a little bit our production. So I would say in one side, it was this opening this publishing branch to understand really all the different types of genres. But at the same time, I think especially we are a very user acquisition driven company in the sense that we always try to innovate, we always try to be ahead of the curve. We literally test everything that we can, all the betas that we can. We have pretty strong partnerships with the networks. So we tend to always be ahead of the curve on the user acquisition and monetization side, which on the day-to-day feels like it's just small steps. But I think, after a few years, when you do look back and you see what you've tested, what you've done, you can see that nowadays 80% of our user acquisition was literally tests that have been done year after year. And then when you do have successful tests, they become part of your day-to-day. And nowadays, 80% of what we do is all the tests that we did in the past 2, 3 years. So always being innovative, I think, in
Right,
all realms, of course.
right, interesting. So, talking about one of your marquee titles, Darts Club, how does that, successful testing looks, particularly for that app?
Exactly. I think one of the most important thing of them all is to be diverse in terms of user acquisition. And when I say this, I mean that there is a lot of types of users. There are like slightly cheaper users that are, I know, not consuming as much IP. They're like very expensive users, but then they become very loyal to your app. There are users that only consume ads, users that only consume IP. So I think we as a user acquisition leader, let's say, you really need to have this view that all users are monetizable, let's say. So you can really make, if you get a user, there is going to be a way that you can monetize it and eventually making it an interesting and profitable user for you. But it's all a matter of testing almost everything everywhere, right? You need to try to target the cheaper users and understand how the networks react to them. You need to target the very expensive users, sometimes 10 times, 100 times more expensive than your average. But at the same time, you'll see that those are the ones that stay for longer. So for us, one of the biggest successes in Darts Club was, and across our portfolio even, is really be as diverse as possible. Try at least once to go for all types of users, and then eventually you'll find the right price for almost all of them. Of course, there are some audiences that are just not interesting because they really, it's almost impossible to break even there. But be, once again, innovative in the terms of like always trying to test everything, always be present everywhere, and then adapt, like with your goals, with your technology, try to make sure that it's as profitable as possible. And then as well on our side, we really think that these CPMs don't really matter that much, because the CPMs are giving you somehow a number, a value number on your user on the ad monetization side, but then you can always monetize that user in a different way, and you can acquire it in a very different way. So we don't focus on the CPMs that much. We really just focus on profitability.
Interesting. I hadn't really heard that take before. Yeah, reevaluating a single metric and thinking, okay, maybe there's other ways we can monetize, but that's cool. Speaking a little bit about evaluation, how do you, and going back to spend, how do you evaluate and optimize your spending between those different types of media? So you've mentioned you have some goal setting, but what does that, I guess, what's an example of that?
Yeah, I think we tried for a bit. We tried to set like very strict spending budgeting. We tried to come up with a few metrics that would be applicable across different networks, across even like different geos. But I think, following up a little bit what I said before, I think setting a common figure for all networks or all geos, or even just for a few geos, but you try to replicate it across networks, it's definitely, I don't want to say a recipe for failure, but I would say a recipe for not reaching the maximum that you can out of your game, especially out of your networks. We really try, our main metric is the profitability rate for a certain game, and then using that ROI metric, we try to then be very open to any kind of metric that we're getting from different networks, different geos, different users. Right now, we have networks that are giving us, for example, on day one on our hyper casuals, around 11% retention day one, and that's not a bad sign. That can be a good sign for hyper casual games in certain networks. Then on the other hand, we have mid-cores and casuals that have almost like 40% day three, and that it's not very, it's showing that for the cost, it's not actually break even after a few months even. So here we try to be as open as possible. We try to really look at all the metrics and understand them first, but never use them as a golden rule to either push a campaign or to stop a campaign. Once again, there are different types of users. All the users are monetizable. We just need to always adjust the benchmarks and the goals that we are aiming for different networks, different geos, even different users.
Yes, and across different apps, it must really keep you on your toes.
Definitely.
Thinking about, yeah.
Definitely.
So what is one tip you can share that's made, I guess, your biggest performance difference in the last year? Would you have one such as that, Gonzalo?
Yeah, maybe I even have a few, I would say. So for example, we moved the playable production in-house, and it took a while. It was definitely a lot of months moving that production from external partner to in-house, but that turned out to be a pretty big win. especially, for example, from Integral, it's very relevant for us to use playables, and having the full power and the full accountability of what is being done, and adjust right away and follow performance, and adapt and iterate. It was super valuable for us. We were able to produce it much faster, much better. We have like our own models that we somehow are utilizing for other games, and that was a big move for us. We're very happy with that. Right now, we're actually even somehow selling it as a service for other publishers. So it's been like very successful. But also, I think we started this mentality of having more ad revenue event campaigns across several networks, and it's been really profitable for us. So utilizing ad revenue events to just launch CPE campaigns across socials, the socials that allow it, across the SDK networks that allow it. But at the end of the day, for the networks that we are not seeing amazing success on ROAS campaigns, this second type of ROAS campaigns, let's call it, is definitely a CPE, but it is utilizing ad revenue events. It's been very interesting for us.
Oh, very interesting. Given this is a sort of integral podcast, I did want to ask you about our features. I believe we're making some use of our latest Amazon App Store feature release. So could you tell us more about it?
Yeah, so right now Amazon is our main and only actually source of user acquisition for now for our Amazon titles. We are porting more and more. Just last month, I think we ported around 6 to 7 games, and we are utilizing Integral as a user acquisition source. It's very interesting for several reasons. I would say the main one is the how easy it is to use, because literally coming up with an Integral campaign for Amazon is exactly the same as for iOS and for Google Play, when there are other partners that is somehow different. So for us, in terms of BI, in terms of tracking performance, in terms of, adding the creatives, everything is exactly the same. So we are super used to that, and all our tools are adapted to Integral, so that's perfect. But then also there's the funny and interesting thing about Amazon users, right? As they are mainly tablet users, we are seeing a huge difference in terms of retention. So much higher retention, much higher session length, much higher involvement within the game. But at the same time, given that Amazon App Store is not as present as, of course, iOS and Google Store, we are seeing a much lower ARPU. So here is Integral is where we are able to adjust our bids, try to understand these users much better. And once again, because we can use it exactly like we're using it for our iOS and Google Play campaigns, it's super easy to use at the moment.
Interesting. Sounds like an interesting growth channel to definitely at least test and explore. So I'm glad we're having some results. So I just wanted to move on and ask you about some of your opinions about mobile marketing. So, to start with, what do you think is your, I guess, boldest opinion or strongest opinion regarding mobile marketing at the moment? And where you think the industry is heading?
Yeah, it's tricky because I feel like mobile marketing itself, especially ad-driven, it's kind of going in reverse against all other industries almost in the planet, because I feel like with the privacy changes, we are going back in terms of being more precise, being more optimal, being more analytical. I feel like it's somehow the other way around, right? It could be at the end of the day better for the user. I'm not against that, especially as a user. I do appreciate a lot privacy. But at some point, in terms of an industry, it's getting trickier to be as precise, as optimal, as analytical, etc. So here is where I think just purely ad-driven games will be harder and harder to scale, because they will be harder and harder to monetize. But at the same time, I'm seeing that a lot of publishers now are moving more to IP-driven games, because at the end of the day, with more privacy, it will be harder to to target users as much as before. So then what publishers are starting to do is starting to acquire more in bulk and ultimately get as many whales as you can get out of that bulk targeting, bulk acquisition. So, but those whales are only present or only relevant on IP-driven games. So it's interesting to see this change in our industry.
Definitely a very large change indeed. So I think to end on a positive note, what is the trend that excites you the most?
Yeah, so one of them is definitely the IP-driven consumption, because even on our hyper casuals, we are seeing that more and more users are getting used to do those small transactions to get the instant reward in the game. So seeing that evolution is also a relief for us, because we can see that by focusing on games that are more IP-driven, we are going on the right path. But at the same time, I'm seeing that more and more big names, big IPs, big publishers are somehow conquering the top charts. Maybe 3 years ago was purely hyper casual. A lot of new studios, publishers, they could go to the top charts pretty quickly. Now you can see that it's mainly driven by either big IPs, big IPs, or by big publishers. So this can be interesting for you as a publisher, because it shows that you really need to nourish your brand, you need to nourish your games, your IP, try to make it something that the users will be willing to play because of the name, of the brand, and it makes you think a little bit further than when we were maybe on the hyper casual era, that it was just production, scaling, stopping, production, scaling, stopping. So here could be more interesting as a game developer and as a publisher.
Yes, and certainly more challenging too.
Yes, definitely.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time, Gonzalo. We've really appreciated you having being on this version of App Chat. And to everyone out there, thank you for watching, and look forward to the next one that should be coming out very soon. Till then, goodbye.